Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys.
Welcome back to Safe Space. I told you guys I was just going to try a different intro out like every time, especially since, 2024 is going to be bringing us a whole different type of energy. So I'm like, how do I really want to welcome you into the safe space? I guess I wanted to sing to you today in a very theatrical voice because one of my guests today is Pamela Lach. She is a spiritual life coach and healer. But for anybody that's been on any sort of awakening or spiritual path, or, just like how you're connecting back to the source that created you and all of us, there's always a story behind it. There's always a reason that we shift and go into, well, obviously the work that we're going to talk to her about today. But we're going to get into something called access bars, which until I met Pamela, I had no idea that this was even a thing. So I get to learn today too. We're going to talk about the difference in that and cranial sacral. We're going to be talking about removing implants. Do you have any idea what that is? Stick around. We're going to let you know. And we're really just going to get into Pamela's story to find out when she answered the call, how it felt when she answered the call, and celebrate the fact that she's in Jersey. I'll leave the accent out. And she is operating a wonderful safe space called Walk in Peace Today. So Pamela, what's up? Hi. Hello.
Hi, Cheyenne. I'm grateful to be here today on this safe space, and I thank you for inviting me.
Well, we've had some really good conversations outside of this. Hold on. My dog is behind me doing funny stuff. Hey. Knock it off. Oh, anyways. So yes, I love our conversations off the record. I can't wait to have this on the record so we can have our little time capsule of your story and just us being together. We need to put our digital footprint in the world. I really want to know all about what you're doing in Walk in Peace Today.
Awesome. And I thank you for asking. I'm so excited to have the center open now. It's been an exciting journey. And so what I do is I work with helping others to find purpose. And I do that through a process of awareness and understanding of the chaos, the darkness, the triggers, the shadows, to allow a person to have more peace and clarity in their life and the human aspect. So while we're learning to connect with spirit in the intuition part of it as well. So when a person comes into the center and wants to get a personal session with me, we sit down and I teach them for probably about 45 minutes to an hour about why they've come to Earth and what they're here to do and the purpose of their life, what our purpose is to evolve here on the planet, and how to connect with the source of all which lives inside each one of us. And then I'll do a card reading for them to try to get an energy of where their purpose may be going and asking them questions through the cards and showing them different things that have been shown to me from, you may call them guides, but I actually know it as Jesus. I've connected with Jesus very, very closely. And he has communicated with me through my cards how to translate and show people what is required and being requested of us as spirits living in human bodies this time around on Earth, which is the most important lifetime that you will ever have, ever. So that leads us to believe that there are other lifetimes to come, and there are lifetimes that have passed. When I get done with doing that, then I will get you onto the healing or therapy bed, however you want to look at it. And what I do is there's this access bars. So there's 32 points on your head. And when I put my hands in different positions, there is energy that is removed from the body. And it's your soul and you decide what you're ready to let go of. We will never take anything out of you that your soul and you have not approved of. Now, benefit of that is that, there can be healing, there can be sadness and joy, there can be peace and harmony. The implant band is everything that you have accumulated from lifetimes, and even things that have been imprinted on you in this lifetime as well. Now, the beauty in this, even as a facilitator, as a practitioner, is that when you're giving a session, if the person on the table lets go of something that you haven't let go of, and your soul is ready for you to let go of it too, boom, it can release and leave you too. So basically, the energy gets pulled through my arms, through my heart, and up and out the top of my head. And this allows for greater freedom from the body of the person who's on the table. Now, there have been numerous things that have occurred to people while they're on the table. Some people see Jesus. Some people experience amazing things happening to them. A lot of people have their third eye, the light comes on in their third eye. So there's this whole transition that takes place. And I think that the transition really takes place when I'm doing the teaching. Because when I'm doing the teaching, I'm allowing you to have these aha moments, which actually change your DNA and extends your life through extending the telomeres, which is in the DNA. So as your DNA unravels, right, you then can have this longer longevity within you, and healing can start to begin. But just getting you on the table and doing that, I don't think facilitates as much as by doing the teaching first, so that you have clarity around what your purpose is and what you came to Earth. Because before you got here, you knew what your purpose was. But once we come through that birth canal, everything is removed from us, and we have to go back and find it again. So we're here on this journey to find out what we're here to do, and what are our potentials, and how do we get to the clarity to know which direction to move in. And what I mean by that is connecting with your intuition, connecting with your soul, in order to figure out how your internal GPS system works. Now, you know how your GPS system works in your car, and it tells you turn right or turn left. You have that same system inside of you. And if you were listening to it, you would know, oh, I'm supposed to go to this class, or I'm supposed to go to this person, or I'm supposed to go here, and I'm not supposed to go here. Right. So you're going to kind of get a little bit of guidance that you may not have otherwise known is inside you. So basically, that's what I try to help people do, to get to a point where they find clarity and they can connect with that inner voice, so that they can start receiving what they need to move forward in their purpose. So it's awareness, it's clarity, and it's peace and freedom. So that's pretty much what we do there. So
sign me up.
Right.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Yeah, people have had some amazing stuff happen for them at the center. And I've had a space before, but this one, there's something special about this place. So I'm really excited about the energy there. So it's really
I do like how you educate instead of just like putting them on the table, because I also think that gives them a minute to like settle in, feel safe, feel informed before they actually get on the table. Because, just with any type of energy work, if you just lay them on the table and they're all just like pin up and they're still not like letting you in, right? You're not going to get like a lot of work done. You might get a little bit, I guess you could just call it like subtle energy. But especially like a new client that's highly skeptical of what even access bars would be. I think me that like needed the logical reassurance before I got into a lot of the work that I do now. That is what you're doing beforehand, is like simmering the left side of the brain down and being like, not all of this is going to make sense, but you're safe here. Let's see what's going on. And obviously, with your highly intuitive skills, all of the things that you've learned and you've been able to really give back to humanity, that is by far my favorite thing about meeting you, is how you have taken all of these things and you're like, okay, I'm taking this lesson and I'm learning it, cleaning it off, and giving it back out to the collective.
Yes. No, this has been Mr. Toe's wild ride by all means. And anybody who's going on a spiritual journey or is just even starting, you have to know that I tell everybody, this journey is not going to be easy. I said, but it is going to be worth it. So you have to give your full intent that this is what you want, because spirit's going to give it to you. And you have to be ready for it, no matter what it looks like. You have to say, this is what I asked for. This is happening for me, not to me. So when the shadows, when the darkness, the chaos, and all of that shows up, you have to understand that this is here for you to evolve. And in your process of evolution, you are going to understand or find someone who can help you understand what is happening so that you can gain the clarity and awareness in order to move forward in a really, really peaceful way.
It sounds so peaceful and centering. I just want to close my eyes and
Yeah,
so
breathe.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what led you to this type of work in the beginning? Would you call it a spiritual awakening? Were you a completely different person before you decided to, switch your trajectory? My goodness, that's a fun word. What happened to you, Pam?
Well, when I was about 9 years old, I was walking out in my backyard in where my was a family, and I looked up at the sky and I was just contemplating, and I didn't even know I had gifts. I'm 62 years old, so 60 some years ago or 50 some years ago, this was not talked about. This was totally taboo. And I'm walking around in my backyard, and I must have had some kind of gifts, and they got shut down. But I basically looked up at the sky and I said, God. I said, this can't be the only lifetime that you ever experience. How in the world could you create such a beautiful place and only give us 80 years to be here? There's no way. It can't be. I can't experience everything in 80 years. The first 20 some, I'm in school. And then after that, wow, now you've got me creating a family and finding someone. And then after that, well, I'm at 50 at this point, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm getting ready to work for so many years. And now what happens then? That's it. I'm done. I'm over. And there's no way. I just knew that there couldn't be just this life. There had to be more. And then I remember shortly after that, it was winter and my mom had just put bird seed out. And I'm on the couch looking out at the birds because I absolutely love birds. And there were cardinals and blue jays and all that out there. And I saw this crown of thorns circling around the top part of my head. And I see it. There must have been about 3 rows of them. And it was like a dark golden, almost like a cinnamony color. And I said to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm seeing stars. And so, because they didn't have any real knowledge or anything of this, my mother took me to the doctor and they gave me B12 shots. So it shut me down completely. There was no psychic awareness around any of this. It was just, you need B12 shots.
You just have a vitamin deficiency, honey. You cannot see dead people.
No, exactly. And I was very intuitive. I know I used to want to tell my mom's friends stuff, and my mother would always say, "You can't say that,"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I have to suppress." So what happens? You naturally shut down. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always been on what I considered not a psychic journey, but a self-help journey. And then let's just say about 2001, I met this person at the job that I worked at the post office. And he started to approach me like he could see something that, I needed to know. And so he started sharing with me all the spiritual stuff. Now, I was on self-help. I was listening to Esther Hicks and things of that nature, but I
Mm.
wasn't really getting into the part that was where I'm at now. And so he started introducing me to all of this. Unbeknownst to me, I found out later that he was my twin flame. I don't even want to get into that story because that's a whole nother generation or generational thing for us later on. But he started teaching me, and he started, we started studying. We studied, oh my God, he was my best friend. 13 years. We talked all the time. It was amazing, really. I thought that we would be friends for forever. And we're not. We're in separation at the moment, but that's okay. It's been 7 years already. And whatever our journey takes us, it's all good. I think I had a psychic one time tell me that we had spent over 60 lifetimes together, which I thought was crazy. She said, you're never going to be able to untangle all the cords between the two of you. I'm like, okay. So I started after, oh gosh, we had this tumultuous ending. And I think this is, well, actually, there's one thing that happened before that. And he had been telling me that this was happening for me, not to me. And I wasn't really getting it. I wasn't understanding, how could this be happening for me? And then one day I get this big intuitive energy comes into my brain, and I got it just like that. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I start bawling on the phone with him. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to go. And I hung up the phone, and I'm still at work, and I'm bawling all the way back to the office. And so he said, oh my God, Pam, he says, I feel so bad. I feel like you just lost your innocence. Now, let me tell you the message that I got. The message that I got was that you created all of this. These people didn't hurt you. You have no reason to blame them for anything. You did this all yourself. You asked for this, and it showed up, and you don't like it. And now you're blaming them. You need to go back, and you need to forgive every one of them. And it didn't mean that I had to go back and tell each person that I forgave them. That forgiveness had to come from within myself, because I was the one hurting from not allowing the forgiveness to take place. So now I had to go back to all the people that I really thought hurt me, that I was holding on to, that I couldn't forgive. And I had to just basically say, I forgive you. The forgiveness was not for them. The forgiveness was to free myself, not the other person. So how long was I holding on to that? Now I'm in my 50s at this given point in time. And here I am getting this. And then we go into this massive separation. During the separation, I had my highest form of evolution. I now had to deal with the fact that there was abandonment. I had to deal with betrayal. I had to deal with loss of love. I had to deal with my best friend walking away. I mean, there was so much here. And I didn't have a person to go to, per se, that, people who come to me right at this moment. I didn't have that. He was that for me. And now it's gone. And I'm like, I felt so horrible inside, and I was angry, and I was sad, and I was vulnerable. And oh my goodness, I could have been on, my friends laugh. I tell them I could have been on Jerry Springer. And they're like, there's no way. And I'm like, no, I could have been on Jerry Springer. You have no idea. They're
like just the rage that you felt inside of you from obviously like what he triggered in you. Is that what you mean? Like just all of, like, you don't want to say it in a victim mindset, like it's his fault, but you're like all of these triggers that came up at once. And I'm so used to having you there when shit gets weird. Like you're kind of like my soundboard. And then like now, let's just call it a vibrational mismatch, divine timing plan, whatever you want to call it. Like all of that's coming out, and it's like the rage of the dark feminine is like rising in you, and you're like, I don't want to take it out on him. He's just a mirror. He's my perfect mirror. I totally get it. I don't want to take it out on him, but I'm fucking pissed. Is that what you're saying when you say like I'm gonna be on Jerry?
Yeah, no, I really wanted to lash out at him. I actually said to him at one point in the end there, and there was a whole money issue involved too, but I actually said to him, I want you to hurt the way you're hurting me. And it was probably the worst thing that I ever could have said to him.
Oh yeah,
but
that does suck.
I didn't have the evolution of even a mirror at that given point in time. So we had talked about how other people triggered us, but we didn't talk about how we triggered one another. So because we didn't have that, we were so cohesive in everything. So it was really kind of a good thing. And then I started, because he actually ended up with leaving with another girl when he knew I wasn't going to be around in the post office anymore. He actually hooked onto another girl, so he was getting his next source lined up. And at that point, I'm like, oh, I'm a source. So it's just so crazy.
Well, wasn't that like really powerful for you though in that moment to realize like it, as much as you want it to be like authentic, especially when you like find that connection, because the moments I think you have with them are authentic, but like what unchecked desires are we actually dumping into each other? So then when you were separated from the situation, even though you didn't want it, then you just see him latch on to somebody who's just going to validate him and like kind of make sure he doesn't grow in a weird way, even though it's a part like of his life lessons and his learning and his journey. but you were like, you were sucking power out of me that I didn't realize was in me. And I was going to you for like this validation or, please don't abandon me. Please don't leave me. Don't be like everybody else,
Yeah.
Um, like, it sucks when you do love somebody like that in your life, and then you have to see like their 3D ego self playing out in the world. And
Yeah.
not from like a judgmental standpoint, but from a mirroring standpoint, because that's when it's terrifying for me because I'm like, I have that in me too. Where is it? How have I been acting out like that? And like, again, you don't want to like sit there and blame this person that accelerated this in you. That's probably the worst part about it is like people that get activated on this type of a journey, they're like, I'm not mad at you. I know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but my human self is very sensitive and she wants answers. Doesn't make
Absolutely.
any sense. But then I love twin flame research. I love divine masculine, divine feminine, everything. My favorite thing about it that I've always read and I think gets so misconstrued is one, there are multiple like versions of twins. It's not just about coming into the physical for like this romanticized 3D union that I think people get too caught up on because they're used to the romantic connections. But it's about you both separating, going your separate ways, healing karma, wounds, traumas, soulmate connections, karmic connections. This could be marriages, having kids, whatever it is. And then throughout your life and all of these amazing things, if you want to answer the call like you did, you find your own way back to God, source, spirit, creator, whatever you want to call it. And it always reminds me of something that I have to tell myself. And it's, I will meet you in my evolution, for I will never sail in your storm again. And that's like a fierce boundary that I had to put on myself when I detached completely from what I felt I was energetically giving to a situation that was taking my power away and was revealing like the lesser boundaries that I had in a situation. And ultimately, like, I don't like feel pity or embarrassed that I acted the way that I did. I was more like, I know that I unconditionally loved you. I know that I still have work to do. I'm so glad. I thank you for showing up, for being me a mirror and letting me go deeper. I think that I will one day get over this devastation that like our souls want to talk, but like Cheyenne's got some work to do and so do you. And I can see like a lot of that understanding as your story evolves that I just think is so powerful and is not talked about enough in the rhetoric of divine union and twin flame talk.
Yeah, no, it's I had my highest form of evolution by him doing this. I know
Mm-hmm.
that this was divinely guided and planned. Absolutely. There's no mistake here by any means. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if everything had been status quo. I would have not had the boundaries. I would my whole life would be entirely different. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have the gifts open that I have open right at this moment. That pain and suffering brought me to where I am today. And I had a choice at that given point in time not to accept it and just stay in that realm of existence and just be in my own victimhood mentality and pity party. But no, I used that. I took that energy and I used it to forge forward to clear my human of this darkness that laid inside of me for eons, lifetimes, you name it, you have it, it's here. We all come in pretty much with a lot of darkness that needs to be cleared, because you have to understand that in the process of this evolution, as you clear the darkness, you're allowing more light to come and shine from within your body. Your soul can now permeate that energy outwardly. And if you don't, the density of the darkness is going to stay there. That's what this is all about, is clearing the darkness out of the human. right? So that your light can shine through, tapping into your light body. And the way that Jesus kind of showed it to me is take a Coke bottle, put a pin in the bottom of it, and let all the darkness drain out. Right. So you're allowing it to drain out so that the bottle becomes clear after that, so that the light can just shine through, and the frequency of the body and the soul become the same frequency. And therefore they can meld together and you can move into the ascension process. All right. So it's just so fascinating. And the other thing that has recently been shown to me by Jesus is he says we're stuck in a cycle of death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And he said to me, like within the last 4 months, he says, there's another level. And I was just like, huh? And he goes, listen, if you clear the body and you do what I did and take your body with you into the next dimension, he said, you'll never have to die again. And I was like, you never have to die again. I'm like, oh my God, I never even thought of that. I just thought we were here for death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. He says, no, he says, that's a cycle that you get caught in. He said, but once you clear yourself of all the darkness, you become like me. He said, and then you'll be able to move into what I've been shown is the Father's house. It's where all of the gifts are. And this is where you can manifest the fishes. I say fishes and loaves the way that he did. Right. Because he had that clarity, he had that clearness within his physical body where he was more light. And that's how people knew him. That's why they fell at his feet when they were around him, because he just shined like the sun and they felt it. You know, I had said to my twin one day, one of the first messages I got with him on this journey was, how come in the days of Jesus, when he walked this planet, it was okay for people to get messages, right? Because you'd hear about them all in the Bible, but now it's not okay for people to get messages. What changed? It doesn't make any sense.
That's a really great question, though.
Yeah.
Because I think I've pondered on it when I've looked through, like reading all of the older biblical texts that I have. And I've asked like different questions, like, you know, when I was younger and he brought my dog back to me and I saw him as a child and I retold the story as an adult, and I've told it to people that are followers and worshipers and they work in the Christian church. I've told my story and they look at me like, Jesus has better things to do than visit you. You know, like there's this weird unworthiness that is taught in a church. And I don't understand how people can't see that it keeps them separated from it instead of realizing you're a part of it.
That's right. Absolutely.
So I love that you said that question like that, because I too have had that same question. I'm like, look, this guy's building an ark. Like this guy's going out in the desert and getting these messages and getting the 10 Commandments and coming back and being like, hey, God told me this, you know, and everyone's like, oh, thank you so much for, you know, having that message. It's amazing how the ancient wisdom has truly been perverted, is probably the best way that I could say it. There's so much perversion in the world today, but we focus on it being like over sexualization, profanity, abuse, war, famine, neglect, all of these things. But if you look at the perversion in the philosophy, theology, religion, whatever you want to call it, that's what fascinates me, is how we've all been manipulated away from the inner voice and inner knowing in ourselves. You know, and it's even looked at as vanity when you get to a point, which I think is hilarious, or delusions of grandeur, that you could hear this voice in your head. And the same voice that's going to give you that message that you want from God is the same voice that's like, hey, your keys are on the counter. You know, like it works in the physical world and it works obviously in the spiritual world. But again, from personal experience and just observation, I have noticed the teachings of separation, whether it's in dualistic practices, dualistic teachings, or, hey, Jesus came and died for your sins. You are free of sin, but we need to baptize you again. Repent and don't do it again. Like there's something that's not being taught at a deeper level. And this just came to me as I was thinking about this. So have you ever read Jesus and the Essenes from Dolores Cannon?
No, I haven't, but I've listened to her.
Okay, well, you should read the book or at least get the audiobook because it'll blow your mind. So there's a part in there, I don't want to give the whole story away, but there's a part in there where she's talking to the guy that they regressed back to that lives in, I think it's called Qumran, in like an Essenes sect at the time. And they were not only talking about like crystals and manifestation and meditation and all of the higher masters that are teaching ancient knowledge that came from this group that wandered the earth called the Kalu, Kaloo. And they were white robed and they wandered and they gave ancient knowledge to those who were there to set the intention to seek it and like be a vessel for the divine, right? Whatever it was for them. And she asked, like, do you know what the 10 commandments are? And like, do you know any teachings of Moses? And he kept referring to an older text in the Torah where they knew of Jesus coming. They were preparing for Jesus to come. They knew that he would be in Bethlehem based on this. But when she brought up the 10 commandments, he said, we have 12. And she's like, really? Because we have 10. So she listed off all of the commandments that we have. And most of them, yes, were correct. Some of them were like changed, obviously, over time because we're playing telephone with divine information. And there were two that were left off. One was referring to reincarnation. And the other one that I protect myself in all the highest forms of energy when I say this is do not follow Baal, which is one of the darkest entities that were coming in at the time to like have humanity follow and like take away from God, basically. So it'd be like modern day Satan is what I would say. But back then, their commandments, what she was channeling from was do not follow this energy. And yes, you do, like you said, there is a cycle of death and rebirth based on karma, based on life lessons, based on soul evolution. But the entrapment is the fact that this world that we live in is so fraught with distraction and karma every step you take. Like, how could we possibly get out of it, even with the realization of, oh, hey, we're quote unquote caught in the matrix? Yep. So I find it interesting that, like, I have this book right here. It's called The Comprehensive Analysis of the Bible. It's a 1927 print. And if you open it up, you can piece together a map of Moses, where he was born, the story of him, and the 10 commandments. And then after I read Jesus and the Essenes, which is technically channeled through the theta brainwave state and hypnosis, QHHT, and they're talking about 12 that was not handed down to us. I am not the type of thinker to go, oh, well, the person who took those two things away from me loved me so much. Jesus probably, wanted me to just focus on 10. I want to know who made the decision to go from 12 to 10 if it was originally 12 handed down, but now we only have 10. And I want to know why I've read books about Jesus Christ talking about unconditional love and loving thy neighbor and coming together in unity and helping each other and reincarnation teachings, and why those are taken away from us and why we already feel almost fucked from the get-go.
Yeah. And not only if there was the possibility of 12 commandments, their math is supposed to be based 12 too. Everything's based on 12. So
see, then that would make so much sense too.
Yep. So our calendar is 12, our hours are 12, there's so many things with 12. But it's actually been said that until we go to base 12 math, the aliens don't even look at us. If our spaceship was up in the air and they looked at it and we had pi on the side of it, they would laugh at us because we have it all wrong. And that's the whole point of it. So there's so much to learn. But when there's two times that I'm feeling that they want me to tell you, Jesus said to me, I was just a man walking the earth. He said, I never wanted anybody to bow to me. He said, I wanted everyone to be like me, not to follow me stepwise, follow what I'm showing you. He said, and nobody's doing it. He said, some people will hear me, some people will see me, some people will feel me. He said, but very few will be like me. He said, will you be like me? And I said, oh my God, show me the way. What do I have to do? And this is why he's been helping me to get through some of these things. So he also, one day, I was in a lot of darkness and I was sitting trying to calm myself in meditation. And this TV screen opens up right in front of my face. And there's Jesus standing there, where I only see from his chest up, and he's got the crown of thorns. And this is just how it's depicted to me. It would be depicted to other people in possibly different ways. He's telepathically communicating with me. And his lips aren't moving. He's just giving me a message. And he says, it's time for you to carry the cross now. And it took me a little bit to figure out what he meant by that, because I was in turmoil. And he said to me, all you can do for these people who have hurt you is send them love. He said, all that they did to me, he said, I never once had a bad thing to say about anybody. And I know that that is where our biggest fault lies here on the planet. It's not in people stealing. It's not in that. It's in this that we say about each other, how we talk to each other. And he made that very clear to me, that when someone hurts you or you feel betrayed or something, it's really not what you see it as, right? And you have to really get the lesson. Why is this showing up for me? What do I need to learn from this? What's the lesson? Why am I seeing this? And a lot of times it's just for you to say, I acknowledge that you've been triggered, right? If someone's yelling at you or whatever, betraying you, that's for you as well. But what comes up in the other person is for the other person. So let's just clarify this a little more. If someone comes up to you and yells at you and you feel it come in your heart center, you just bought that energy like you bought a sweater, right? So now you have to clear that energy unless you know a trick. When that energy comes in, you can say, is this mine? Is this mine? Is this mine? Return to sender, right? Because it'll lift out of you. But if you don't know enough to actually have that energy lift out of you, it'll become a part of you. And you want to give that back as soon as you possibly can. Same thing with your thoughts. He told me the thoughts are here, feelings are here. Your gut is where fear resides. So when you have a thought come in your head, if it's not in alignment with what you want, you need to kick it out, because what some people call, I'm going to say ADHD, but it's not really ADHD. I used to have 17 voices talking in my head, and they're telling me all kinds of things to do. When you understand that none of those voices are really, that's part of the chaos, right? So I called it stacking questions when I started studying this. And I said to somebody, what do you mean stacking questions? Well, you're asking question on top of question on top of question. Spirit doesn't know what to answer, because when you get an answer, you may get a chill run through you as your answer. But the only thing is now, because you've asked 6, 7 questions, you don't know which question they're answering. You have to slow down your questions so that spirit can give you an answer, right? And I was like, oh, I'm like, well, that's really interesting. So now I have to be very aware of the questions I'm asking and what I'm asking so that I can get the answer that I want. So we have to learn that whatever is showing up for us, darkness, chaos, shadow, mirrors, whatever it is, the person that you think is projecting that upon you, you have chosen that person to come in and help you to evolve. They're here to help you to get through this darkness so that you can release it from the human body, so that you can acquire the light that has always been yours. And this darkness is just a density within your body that won't allow the light to shine through. So these people that are doing these things are doing it for your personal evolution, and we need to take responsibility for that. We need to know, and I don't mean that anybody should harm you in any way, shape, or form. I just want you to see the mirrors and the patterns that keep coming at you, dating the same kind of person, these kind of things, having the same kind of things happen at jobs. These are all lessons. These are things for you to really learn how to navigate through this stuff so that it can fall out of your auric field for you to have more peace and more clarity. So we have to stop blaming people for things that we think that they've done to us. They didn't do it to us. They did it for us. Would you agree?
Yeah, everything you're saying is absolutely right. And I do love that you obviously put the disclaimer of, I don't want anybody like hurting you or beating you or all this stuff. But karma and reincarnation are two of the things that came to me in my earlier years, even when I was in the church. And it was just as simple as like, do unto others as you would want done to you, and what comes around goes around. And when, somebody not necessarily like taught me karma, didn't teach me what theology, philosophy, or religion that it comes from, because it's practiced in so many, it's not just one, right? I was like, that makes sense, right? Like, if I don't want it done to me, why the hell would I do it to you? Not that I, practice it perfectly, because I'm definitely here to mess some stuff up and learn some lessons. But then reincarnation came, and I'm like, that makes so much sense to me. That feels right to me. And we were introduced to just Jesus Christ as Jesus Christ first, like with my mom. And we lost a family member like a month after I was born. It was my mom's sister. She had gotten really sick, and she had passed away 6 weeks after I was born. And I still put myself in my mom's shoes to figure out like how she was able to like mentally handle that loss. And the older we got, we would hear like, she's our guardian angel, she looks over us, all of these beautiful little stories, right? But they put footprints in the sand on her little like funeral pamphlet thing. I don't know what they're called. The thing you get every time you go to the funeral and you feel bad if you throw it away. That thing. But footprints in the sand was like her thing. So we always equated it to her, and we always equated the visualization of like Jesus like carrying you when shit got a little rough, but you didn't have the awareness that he was there because you were too busy feeling abandoned, because he wasn't doing the work for you, almost, is what I got from it the older that I got. So like, my house is still filled with footprint stuff. If I go like and I buy something or I see it somewhere, I'm always putting footprint stuff everywhere, because not only like my first introduction was Jesus Christ, and then we obviously went into like Christianity and I think Baptist church when I was growing up, and I visited a Methodist church, and I was so interested in all the different ways that people worshiped him. And now why were all these people that are worshiping the same people like talking shit about each other and like fighting each other, right? Or, if like in Mormon, like it's John, I can't think of what his name is, and then like Jesus is like a step down. So like I was always fascinated with, what is God to you? And why did I have this mystical experience with Jesus that when I go to his followers, I'm like, I saw Jesus. And they're like, no, you didn't. I'm like, well, I saw my grandma after a funeral. This is what she was dressed in. This is what her glasses look like. And this is the experience. And they're like, well, ghosts don't exist. So there were like so many like weird parameters that again did not feel right in my body. And when you're a kid, you obviously can't, like you at 9 years old, whether you expressed yourself or not, there's just not an audience for it. And it leads you to almost like deny parts of yourself, right? So you can fit in to this religious illusion or this dogma or dharma, whatever you'd like to call it. But at the end of the day, I know that the relationship that I've had with Jesus isn't what anybody else has been trying to put on me my whole life. And that is probably where a lot of rebelliousness came from, because I was like, I don't want to demonize you for the way that you worship, because I think it's great that you have something that you're working towards. What I'm upset about is the Jesus that I talk to isn't the Jesus that you talk to. So now we're at a discord in humanity when we're supposed to love our neighbor and we're not supposed to judge each other. Because I'm like, religious triggering is so annoying, right? Like, you're just like, I just saw this and I wanted to see if you were aware of this, and whether they're aware of it or not, like, it really upsets people, is what I've noticed. So even when I hear you talk about all of the work that you've done with Jesus and the way that you talk about it, have you found people that'll just kick it back immediately because you are in somewhat of a spiritual, free-minded, open-minded, unconditional love sect of Jesus versus a closed-minded, congregational, I just can only read from this Bible. If I read anything out of this Bible, I'm going to hell type people?
Well, I try to tailor it, and I try when I'm doing a session, I ask them first because I have some people that are Buddhists, so I'll use Buddha instead of Jesus. We're all praying to the same source. There's one source. There's one source, and you can call it whatever you want to. You can refer to it whatever way you want to. He actually said to me, if you think about it, Jesus didn't write anything in the Bible. It's all written by man, right? So he said, I didn't write any of that. That was written by man through my messages, but through their filter. So I'm grateful that you brought this up, because in the beginning they were like, no, you need to talk about this. So I find it very interesting that on Facebook, on the Reels or wherever, TikTok, whatever, you have a whole bunch of, and I'm not bashing by any means. I want people to understand this, where these Christians do come on and they bash people in the spiritual community for the crystals and the sage and the cards and all that stuff. And a lot of times I want to reach out to them and say, but like, even I guess we could probably say Doreen Virtue, where she's now a born again Christian and she tells everybody to burn her cards.
I
And
have her angel numbers book right here, and I'm not burning this. This book is amazing.
no, and it's interesting because if you ask me, it got her to where she is today and the way that she looks at Jesus. So why would she bash it if it's a potential for somebody to actually get to that position where they can honor him in the way that she honors him? I love the way she honors him. I don't like the fact that she bashes people for using the cards that she used while she wasn't on the path that she's on right now. So she wants us to throw away all the cards. And if you listen to her story, it's actually pretty fascinating, where she puts crosses across stuff that her husband wants to keep and her mother wants to keep that have anything to do with anything that she did. And I honor her for that. But for her to condemn her journey to get to where she is and want us to just go where she's at now, man, she's missing a little bit of something, I think, because what if we can get that way too? It's not allowing us our true way of wanting to receive what's being given to us. And for the hardcore Christians that are knocking us too, I'm a Christian as well, a spiritualist. I want them to understand that we all have a journey that we have to go through. We're not all here in the same timeline. We don't all have the same amount of past lives. We're not all here for the same lessons. Nobody's path is going to be the same as someone else's. Your path is your path because you're trying to find the God that lives and exists inside of you. And however you do that is amazing. Just do that. Don't go by what someone else's path is. I tell people, don't listen to me. Go find your own truth with the God that lives inside of you, because that's what's animating your body. You would never look for God inside, but that's where he is. And when you go inside and you find him, your world is going to change and open whatever way he wants you to find him. And that's the key here, is that we don't bash people for where they're going. We honor them and we support them and we hold space for them, no matter what that path looks like. I have some friends right now that are going through a really, really dark place with their spirituality, but it's something that they have to go through in order to get to the other side. And there has to be an honoring for that too, and just holding space, not saying, oh, they're on a bad path. No, they're on a path, and all paths lead to the same place, home, which is not here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
You
we're all
said
on
so
a
many
journey.
things. I'm trying to remember what I'm going to say afterwards because I'm like, yes, mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's all being channeled. So it's just so interesting that, my head is lit up like a Christmas tree right now. So it's just like whatever you want to know, they're going to just give you the answer. And I just love it when it comes through like this because it's so powerful. It's so right on point. But I will have to say that when I see these people on Reels, Facebook, I don't do TikTok, but I know it's on TikTok too. I don't bash them for where they're at either, because they're on a journey as well. So I just send them love, just the same as Jesus. Whenever anybody's doing something that may not be in alignment with what you're doing, send them love, hold space for them. I wouldn't even say pray for them, because, just sending them love is a prayer. So it's really where we're supposed to be.
That's very true. Back to the cross thing on Dorian Virtue, because I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
Um, if I amassed a bunch of followers in a religious context before I died, or technically I came here because the Romans were oppressing people under the guise of religion, and I was actually the rebel. So I didn't teach in churches. I went against the modern day status quo and I was killed for it. And I didn't get put up on a cross, say a dragon burned me alive instead. That was the death penalty for going against, again, the religion of the time, the status quo, the narrative that the Romans wanted you to believe, correct?
Yes.
And then after I died, and I came back 3 days later, and I was like, hey, you too can do this. And then I'm out. Um, and since humans need something to worship outside of themselves due to this weird unworthiness that we all feel, which really is lack of love and unconditional love because we all want to go home, everyone was like, my idol that I will put up to get evil away from me is a dragon. So like now there's dragons all over and that's my religion, right? Why is the thing that you nailed me to the thing that protects me from quote unquote evil doers? Because I grew up with cross necklaces. For the longest time, I was going to tattoo a cross on me, just kind of like my homage to Jesus and, the things that I personally have learned from him and somewhat picked up from certain teachings of a church that I've allowed my intuition, like introduce to your intuition and kick out what's not for you. But I've always wondered, why is the thing we nailed him to the thing that everybody has up around to like signify I am a follower of Jesus with this cross?
Well, one thing that you might also look at, which has been brought to my attention in the last couple of years, is this. So, and not any bashing here by any means, because I was just brought to my awareness. So the Romans were actually the ones who supposedly committed the act. But yet now, if you go into a Catholic church, they have him up on the cross, right? So
Everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
so a lot of people don't think about that. And it's like, okay, so are they paying homage to him? It's like, and I didn't think about it until someone brought it to my attention. I go, that's really interesting. So it's just, you have to look at these things and say, we don't know where these people are that have brought these things into equation. And we don't know where they're going, and we don't have to listen to them. But there's nothing wrong with wearing a cross, I don't think, but it's just really, you're right in a lot of ways with that. So it's, how is that any different than wearing an evil eye or something of that nature, you know? And you're looked at for wearing an evil eye, believe me. It's not a good thing
Yeah,
to
you
wear.
are. Or like
Yeah,
the hand of Fatima or
yeah,
anything like that. If it's outside of it, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know,
yeah,
they're treating you with some generational trauma right there.
sure.
And they're like, oh my gosh, that's completely out of my wheelhouse. Everything outside of the cross in this book is demonic. Get away, blah, blah, blah. And I really do think it does come down to intention. But I have blasphemous thoughts like, if I were Jesus, would I really want people idolizing the thing that I hung on and suffered on and died on? And
Not a,
I would not want that, nor would I want a preacher coming and convincing the people that are still incarnated going, well, keep in mind, you know, he died for your sins. Like he knew this was going to happen. Because in Jesus and the Essenes, which seriously, one of my favorite books, um, they talked about the people that met him and like saw his upbringing, the lost years of Jesus that the Holy Bible won't tell you about because they need him again to be this ideological biblical force that none of us can ever attain on earth because we're so unworthy. Um, they talk about how he took in every moment that he could because he knew what would be his undoing from the moment he came. He literally, they said the way that he looked at a flower, nobody could look at a flower and see the beauty the way that Jesus saw it. The way that he talked to you, and when he looked into your eyes, you were the only person there to him, and he could see you, he could see through you and see your soul. And I'm like, yeah, that's the Jesus I've met. You know, that's the stories that I've found that make absolute sense. The one that honestly annoys me is the story of Mary Magdalene and how it's completely falsified based on a weird patriarchal oppression of the feminine origin in all religion. So I would just like to say to the listeners now, if you subscribe to the story that Mary Magdalene was like some whore with like 9 demons on her and Jesus saved her. That was a sermon that a minister slash politician slash priest who was running for political office at the time, old school political office, not the weird shit that we're doing now, two wings of the same bird that are never going to fly, but back to the ancients. Um, he wrote it as a Sunday sermon. Somebody like in the crowd that was a part of putting the Bible together for like Constantine and the Roman Catholics was like, that's great. Let's put that in the Bible. So because we're playing telephone with divine intervention and these people with the wrong intentions are taking these stories, now everybody literally believes that Mary Magdalene is like some whore that Jesus saved. And there's nothing in my body from all of the research I have done with Jesus and Mary, them together. And if you just look at the Last Supper, the fact like how close she is to him in there and all of the shared missions they've had, I absolutely know that that was planted. And if you look at all of the other stories of the oppression of feminine in any, again, theology, ideology, religion, you know what I'm saying? Anything you look at, there is still this lesserness of women when really there are some ancient civilizations we can look back on where the seers were only women, the medicine women were only women, the men that, yes, were the queens or the kings, the queen actually made the decision. She was the soundboard for her king. The king's job as the masculine was to protect his feminine in the physical, and she protected him in the spiritual. So when you look at all of these stories, you really have to question, why is there a narrative of the suppressed feminine? And my favorite growing up was the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And now, through a lot of it, I finally realized it's the Father, the Mother, and the Son, which pagans honor Father, Mother, Son, and do a bunch of feminine and masculine rituals, which I am A-okay with, in my opinion, because that's all about nature worship. But the people that don't ask the questions, the ones that literally ring in my head all day long because I just want to know, like, multiple takes. And how do we not see that the creator, the woman that gives life, has been so suppressed in a multitude of ancient scripts all the way to modern day Bibles being printed today, and we're okay with it? How can we just go along with this bullshit?
So, have you read Tom Kenyon's book, The Magdalene Manuscript?
I'm going to write that down again because I have not actually read it, but I've heard about it before and kind of like looked, online, like what is in this book. But say it one more time so I can write it down.
Tom Kenyon, and there's a lady, she channels, and it's called The Magdalene Manuscript. So I just want to bring another thing to light for you on that. And you said so many things, and I've got all this stuff going in my head. I hope I remember it all. So basically, Isis was teaching her the sex magic. And the reason that Isis was teaching these people the sex magic, and I believe Mary, Mother Mary, also was taught this sex magic as well, which was the reason that the Immaculate Conception took place, from what I'm hearing right at this moment. So you have to understand that the role of the feminine is to raise the Ka and Ba body of the divine masculine. And that was Mary's, what she had to do for him. And if you read the book, you're going to learn a lot about that, because we're not just talking human, we're talking about a spiritual layer of energy. That's why she was labeled as the whore, because she was doing the sex magic. So that's the way that it's been given to me, right? So there's a whole way of looking at that as well that you might just want to look into and study, because the book is really kind of good. In regards to Jesus dying for our sins, I have it looked at as a different way. He didn't die, and this is what he said to me: I did not die for your sins. I was the one who figured out how to free you from your own sins, right? So he said, if that was the case, why do you still have sins today? If I died for them, why do you have them? And why is it just okay for you to go to church on a Saturday night and just say, this is what I did and I'm absolved from it? Absolutely not. It didn't clear your body from it. You still have it. You just passed it on to somebody else, is what you did. You freed your soul from it, but it hasn't left your body. It's still in the human part, which needs to be cleared in order for you to go into the next dimension. So basically, he said to me, I came here to show you how to do the same thing I did. He said, I was never here to do it for you. I want you to do the same thing I did. Clear your body, just the same way as I did, of all the darkness. And yes, he did come in with a higher DNA activation than we have. Absolutely. And he knew his purpose. And what was his purpose? To teach us how to do what he just did, so that we can move into that dimension. And it's his teachings, right? Treat others better, right? Honor your mother and father. It's all these things that have been said, and that I may not be giving them in the right order or whatever, but that was what it was, right? So you want to honor yourself as well. So when you really understand that, when he told me that, I was like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. I have to follow what you did, not follow you, but follow what you did. Do what you did, and I can go where you went, getting out of the cycle of reincarnation. So I feel like that was probably the most important part here. I know there was something else that you said that wanted to, and if prayer was the answer, why aren't our prayers answered? For as many people that are.
Oh, I can answer that. It's an Andy Andrews quote.
Well, of course.
It says, God feeds the birds, but he doesn't put the worm in the nest.
Same thing, right?
So like prayer and manifestation could be considered the same thing, because you're asking a higher frequency to bring something to a lower vibration. Like if you can picture it, like I'm sitting down here and I'm praying up to you to bring something to me. And manifestation or prayer will still take action in the right direction, which ultimately, if we're speaking in frequency and vibration, means you already know what you want. What you see in your eye can be manifested in reality. Just like, kind of like if you think your imagination is in heaven, like as it is in heaven shall be on earth, or however that goes. I know I won't quote it perfectly, so don't comment mean shit to me about how I misquote the Bible. But you have to raise your vibration because everything is a vibration, just like abundance. I know money's the biggest evil on earth, but it's also the one thing that all of us want so bad, to have freedom to do other things, because we are enslaved by needing more of this shit, right? So again, if you're going to go and pray for it, but you don't do anything for it, what the hell? What the hell? What's going on? The other thing that I wanted to say is when you brought up ISIS, I'm so glad you brought up ISIS, because I loved studying the research where Jesus and Mary Magdalene both went and studied at like the ancient mysticism schools, because they also talked about like, hey, did Jesus go out and travel anywhere? And Jesus and the Essenes, and they talked about plenty of trips where he would even take his like mom to places. And I can't remember who they actually, like where he actually studied, but it did prove that he kind of wandered like the Kalu did to go and learn this information, because he still came through the birth canal. He still knew what he needed to do. He was still clear when he came out. But when he was born, there was a prophecy around the same time that he was going to be born, and the Roman king knew about it, and they knew the vicinity of where this baby was going to come from, right? So the king at that time actually ordered all babies to be literally like killed between this time and this time. So like Jesus had to be hidden and like leave Bethlehem, even though there's like a whole big thing of like, you know, away in a manger, da 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 da. We all grew up singing that. But he had to literally like hide and almost be like separated. So I know that there's like this really big narrative that, oh my gosh, Jesus is here, and the whole town came together, and oh my goodness, Jesus is here. Well, if that actually happened, then he would have been killed the same day by the Romans. Therefore, him going into hiding and learning how to be human, even though you're right, his DNA was absolutely of a higher range than what we were able to access. But he would have had to go and relearn all of these things so his body could actually function and learn it. So yes, I 100% believe that Mary also did stuff from Isis's teachings. We could get into Thoth and building Egyptian mythology, so many things that we could go down to. But one of my favorite things that I came across was actually the Theuba prophecy. I always mess it up, but I have an episode on here where I also mispronounce the title, so please go look it up yourself. But it is basically like advanced warnings from ETs from like Planet Nine. And when I was talking about the guy that was translating the author's book, his name's Samuel Chong, and he's dedicated a greater portion of his life for people to understand not only what the second coming of Jesus could potentially look like from a dimensional and elevational form, and even like hinting at new earth. They talked about how Jesus is from their Planet Nine planet, and it would still be the same frequency that people who have like near-death experiences or actually die and go to heaven, they're all talking about the same frequency. It's just the way that it's broken down for human beings. So like this guy is on this like anti-gravity like moped floating through the sky, which I'll lose like anybody who believes in Jesus at this point. So hang on. And they go to this like dome where the bodies are floating, because these people like Jesus, like Buddha, like Moses, Thoth, whatever you want to call, they supposedly originated again from the highest frequency. We're all still talking about the same thing, translating in different ways. And it's in this dome, and their bodies are preserved. So one, they're out of the reincarnation, right? Because if your body is, you know, decomposes, you're probably coming back. And this guy saw Jesus, like, and he noticed him because of the wounds in his hands And he said it took him back instantly because he knew his teachings of Jesus and where it came from. But these higher dimensional entities that are here to, quote, overlook Earth and help us get out of what would be a category 3 state, which is basically on the verge of apocalyptic cataclysms based on the division in societies. Atomic weaponry is what they're referring to. But he saw Jesus floating. It was his actual body. And then they pointed out all of the other bodies that were there, and they were big, amazing, influential characters on the religious side of things. I'm not going to say he saw John Lennon's body because trust me, where did he go? But when it comes to him actually seeing Jesus and identifying him in this higher planetary state, it just blows open so many different questions that I always have about why are we fed this certain version? And what is it actually doing? Is it helping your evolution to only read this one book and only follow blindly? Because he did tell you to question. He did teach people to feel into their body. And is that right? And also, if we're talking about reincarnation, we've all started our race at a different time. So like maybe my journey back to heaven isn't going to be your journey back to heaven, just like you said with Doreen Virtue, like literally renouncing everything that she's done, which I've seen her decks. They're beautiful. I don't understand how you could think that you channeled that negatively from anything. I don't know what negative thing happened to her to renounce all of her things. Like you said, that's her journey. Let's send her some love. But there are so many different versions that we can look at all of the energy and vibration and religion that at the end of the day, it really does come back to you coming back into center and being like, what is true for me? Because, maybe I'm not here to figure out how to get out of reincarnation this lifetime. Maybe I'm just adding a piece to my oversoul and adding a piece to the collective. I'm going to be significant for 80 years in my mind. I want to be of significance. I want to serve the world. And then when my life is done, now the insignificance is what I am. And I go back to the all of some sort.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point about Buddha too, and yogis too. So like you're talking about them like floating in space or whatever, wherever he saw them. So think about Buddha. He sat under the Bodhi tree apparently for 25 years. Do you know what he was doing? Clearing his mind, because that's where everything stems from. So when the mind is clear, he had to get rid of all the negative thoughts in his mind. And when his mind became clear, he became enlightened. He became aware of things that he couldn't see otherwise because of all of the thoughts that were running through his head. So it leads me to believe, wow, it took him 25 years to actually do that. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Not in this world. Where are you going to sit safely for 25 years?
Well, it just took him that long to get to enlightenment, right? So think about how many times he had to sit under that tree. And I don't know his full story. That's just how it's been projected to me, that if I had to sit quietly for 25 years and have no distractions, I probably could do that too. But what I do know is I'm just kind of going back to access. When we do access consciousness, when we do a bar session on you, basically it brings you to a place of clarity where you don't have all those monkey mind, mind chatter things, and it's just you. And I will never forget the day that it was just me and I didn't have all those 17 voices talking in my head. I sat in the chair and I'm just sitting there and I go, what do I do now? Like, I don't have anybody telling me what to do. For so many years, I've had all these voices in my head telling me what to do. You're not good enough. You're horrible. You're never gonna lose the weight. You're never gonna this. You're never gonna do that. Right? All those voices have kept me from having peace inside of me. And that's the part of the human that's keeping you held down, the darkness, right? So we have to clear the darkness, right? So that's why the access bars appealed to me because I'll never forget when I got off the table the first time, there was just such clarity. It was like there was no mind chatter. It was quiet in my head, but I didn't know what to do with it because I had been so conditioned to hearing the voices to tell me what to do. So
That's
now,
very true. That's a really great point to bring up too.
yeah,
Especially when like you meet those, honestly, like those elevated vibrations, like that happiness, the gratitude, you're like, what do I do now?
yeah, because I haven't
What do
done
I do with this?
And then I started to feel emotions in my body one day, and I'm sitting in the chair and I have nothing going on up here. Because remember, this is where thoughts are, this is where your feelings are. Now I'm getting feelings, right? And I'm like, why am I feeling sad? I'm in a really good place. I'm not thinking anything. And it's like, oh, they're emotions. I'm like, oh, this is entirely different. So now you have to heal this center, because if we look at the 7 chakras, right, we're looking at the same pillars that they use in the Jewish religion as well, that have to be cleared and open. The centers have to be open. And I'm like, oh, this makes total sense to me, because I was glomming it all together when I was doing my meditation. They're like, no, you have to separate all these. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, this is a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this. And it was just like, keep going, just keep going. That's all. And I lit this one up and I lit this one up. And I don't know, I guess the throat chakra has been awakened to some degree. The creative sexual center has been opened, and the root chakra has been opened. The solar plexus I'm still working on. And I shouldn't say, I just was told today, don't ever say that again, because you've completely arrived, Pam. I don't believe that I've completely arrived. I still have so much to learn. And I'm sure that I've said some things today that some of your listeners are not going to agree with. That's fine. This is the way that it was brought to me. And you keep what you get out of this and whatever resonates with you. This is the way that it was projected and shown to me. I want you to find your own way, because that's what's going to bring you truth, not the way that I tell you to do it. Find your truth with your soul, the God that lives inside of you. That's the best piece of advice I could give anybody here. Just go on the journey. Just start. Take one step. Whatever you're attracted to, start there and just keep going. And eventually, if spirit sees you're seeking something, they're going to guide you to where you need to go. And everybody has a separate journey. I will never tell you that your journey is going to be the same as mine. It is never, ever going to be the same as mine. My journey is not going to be the same as Buddha. My journey is not going to be the same as Jesus, Moses, any of them. We all have separate journeys to find the truth. And the truth lies within you. It's not external. So find your truth. It's the best piece of advice I can give anybody.
That is beautiful advice, because just like with all the things that we've questioned and talked here, I wouldn't want anybody to go, oh, I heard this podcast episode and now this is my exact belief, without investigating it on their own or feeling how it feels to them. However, I will caution, if you are supremely disconnected from your body or stuck in the framework of religious dogma and you haven't gone out, you are going to get cognitive dissonance. It will disconnect your critical thinking, and ignorance sets in when you disconnect those two pathways in your mind. You go to more of a defensiveness pattern. I've experienced it, so I'm only going to talk from things that I've experienced or that I'm curious about. So that's wonderful advice. We are all on our own path. The gun did not go off at the same time and we're all running next to each other. I know Ram Dass says we're all just walking each other home, and in an aspect we are. Another thing Ram Dass said was, you should treat everybody like they're God in drag. If you want to see the energy source that created you, I use God because it's the easiest like term for the creator aspect. But for whatever you believe in, right, whatever your highest power is, like you go to them and you're like, I'm squeaky clean, I love you, you're amazing. But then somebody else comes up and you're like, get out of the way, and like this humanistic side of you comes in, or, oh, like I should meet God, I'm more this, like all these weird egotistical things come in that you've seen in a lot of religious settings. To be nice about it, it's more than just religion, but that's the easiest one to call out. when I saw you should treat everybody like God in drag, I was like, man, what a mission. Because I fail often, and I mean, I think there's just so much more to it that we should be taught. Like, I love that you said you can pass the prayer along, but you haven't removed it from your body. There's a great book by an author I can't think of now, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. So you can Google that on your own and really learn how to feel into your body. There's a book called like The Seven Spiritual Laws, and it talks about how to tell what's for you and what's not for you. And it's about what feels good and what feels bad when you present it to your intuition. Um, but yeah, there's so many things that I didn't even know we were going to talk about today, and I'm so glad that we did. But before we get off here, I do want people to know more about your business and more about your online coaching services. And obviously, we all know, if we are avid listeners, that we get to hit the description down at the bottom, and you have all of the links to not only me, but definitely Pamela here to get in contact and work with her online. But if you are in the Jersey area, she has a wonderful safe space for you to be able to come hang out in and get a little piece of yourself back.
Yeah, maybe a big piece.
Maybe a big piece, yes.
There are two books that I also would like to recommend to your listeners and watchers. One is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And that book was written in 1938. It was not published till 2011. Napoleon Hill was told that if he published this book, his life would be ruined. So I don't know who died last, I think in 1970, one of them passed away. And the family now has decided to put the manuscript out. And I think it may have actually been almost before or right after Think and Grow Rich that Napoleon Hill wrote. It is a wonderful book to teach you about the darkness and what the darkness is here to do and what it is doing and how to kind of get out of the darkness. I'll tell you, when I first read that book, I was really angry. I was really upset. And then I'm like, wait, no. The darkness was created for us to find the light again. Rethink this. So that's book number one. And then there's another book called The Journey Home by Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. And Cryon is a beautiful being that's here to help the magnetic grid on the planet. And it's just, I was kind of a guru of Cryon. And then when COVID hit, he's not really going too many places again. Although I was supposed to see him in March of this year, but that got canceled. So I'm hoping to see him again soon. But that book also talks about the darkness, because we have spoken before about spiritual bypass, right? So we can't bypass the darkness. It exists within the human aspect of us. And by you coming into complete awareness, you can shift how you perceive and receive the darkness, because it is there for you. It's not really against you. And once again, I want you to just understand you have to have awareness around anything before you can change it. So those two books are huge in my teachings. And when I'm sitting with someone, so I will refer to specific things within that book. The Journey Home is a really great read. It's a wonderful story. So that may be a good one to start out with before you touch the other one with the darkness as well. Don't get caught up by the fact that it says devil, because I had the book for 2 years and wouldn't read it. And then when I finally picked it up and I read it, it changed my life. So, how can you get in touch with me? Or was that the question, Cheyenne? Because I just
yes, online coaching services. Okay. If I'm in the local area and I want to come visit you, how do I get social media wise onto you? If you're in the local area, just go to Google and type in Walk in Peace Today, or go to your social media.
Yeah, and I also do have a Facebook group if you wanted to connect with that in Walk in Peace Today as well. I also have a business page, Walk in Peace Today, and we also have an event page where you can go to events at Walk in Peace Today if you want to see what we have coming up if you're in the area. And if you want to schedule a session with me through Zoom or coming to the center. You'll find that in walkinpeacetoday.com. So there's a couple of ways that you can get in touch with me. It's awesome.
I love it. I loved our conversation. We went to a place I had no idea we were going.
It just comes through. I, can't stop what they're giving us. So
just happens. Just two cool energy beings having human experiences, asking questions. Not trying to piss anybody off, but probably will.
I kind of thought that too, but I want to apologize right now. If anybody gets triggered by this, call me up or text me and we'll work on it.
I am not apologizing for giving you an alternative perspective. I would like you to look at it as thank your triggers for they show you where you are not healed.
That's right. Where you need to do a little bit of work and have awareness.
Yes.
And that's finding your truth. That's finding your truth too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And I look forward to speaking with you in the future. And hey, when I find myself in the Jersey area, I will be walking into peace for sure and checking out all of the modalities that you're offering, all of the collective.
Bless you. I thank you so much for your time today in this space. So safe.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Friends, before we get out of here, Vitality Exposed Performance Photography, ran by Kelly Green. Go check her out. I've got it linked below for you. She is going to bring another wonderful song from Nightcap. It's called Honey. You want to hear it? It's pretty good. Go check these guys out as well. I have everything linked below for you. Love you.